Jazana Weeder, Director of Operations here at Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. And I am excited to introduce our moderator, Dr. Chris Benner, who will be moderating our final panel of the day. Dr. Benner is the director of UC Santa Cruz Institute of Social Transformation and has been an incredible partner with INBEP in our economic development projects that we've had. Just some background regarding Regions Rise Together. This is an initiative that started 5 years ago, so 2020, with the support of California Forward and the James Irvine Foundation. INBEP has proudly served as the project manager for the last 5 years for the Regions Rise Together. This effort has brought together over 20 organizations that have played key roles in collecting data and doing hands-on work in our communities. This project went through 2 iterations. So the first one is Blueprint 1.0. That was released in 2021, as well as our most recent soft launch that was released in January of this year, Blueprint 2.0, which is an expansion of community data, community work within our Tri-County, San Benito, Monterey, and Santa Cruz counties. This effort made INBEP realize that the need for Black voices needed to be heard in our region, and this is the reason why we also started our Regional Black Leadership Roundtable over a year ago. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Benner to start the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jazana. So it's great to be with you this afternoon. I'm very conscious after Mike's comments about being here representing one of the 2 really outdated institutions in our society, the University of California, public academia. And even worse, I'm a tenured professor. So yeah, the ancient of the ancient. And actually hearing him talk reminded me of my favorite dinosaur joke. Yeah, I'm a father of a son. I have lots of dinosaur jokes. But this was good because it kind of fits into Mike's political analysis. So what do you do when you see a Tyrannosaurus Rex? Hope that it doesn't see you. But there are some things that tenured professors still do that hopefully are useful, and one of which is putting some numbers to, I think what Mike was lifting up is the ways that Black and brown and low-income and working class white communities have been left behind by our economy for a long period of time, really half a century, 50 years. And a recent study by the RAND Corporation documented that in a powerful way. If you took the proportion of the national income that went to the bottom 90%, like that proportion has shrunk over time over the last 50 years, but let's say we kept it at the same amount for the last 50 years, that would have meant $79 trillion more in the pockets of everyday Americans. Spending on food, on clothing, on housing. Now, I realize $79 trillion is kind of hard to imagine what that means, so let me put it in a little more realistic way. If you stacked up dollar bills into a tall pile, $79 trillion bills would take you all the way to the moon 22 times. If you wanted to spend $1 million an hour, and there are people in our world who do spend $1 million an hour, you could spend $1 million an hour every hour of the day, 24, 365, for 9,000 years. So that's a lot of money. That's about, just one more, it's about $4 trillion a year now that is, out of the pockets of everyday working Americans, going into speculation in the stock market by and large, rather than feeding our local economies. And you could give every worker in America a 50% raise this year and every year going forward. And that's a sign of, I think, the ways that inequality hurts our economy. And that what Regions Rise Together has really focused on is lifting up the voices of communities in our region and really trying to identify and understand what are the priorities of those communities in our economy and what should we be investing in going forward, with a goal of shared prosperity. But it's really prosperity, because that's how we get to prosperity, is shared prosperity. So that last you'll really hear from me. The rest is all going to be dialogue and discussion and hearing from our incredible leaders who were key part of building this latest blueprint and have been involved in the Regions Rise Together. And what I'd love to do is start by having you introduce yourself, your organization, and then say a little bit about what you were involved in Regions Rise Together and what you see as kind of the one single most important thing you hope people take away from the work of Regions Rise Together. So Mariam, we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mariam Alao, and I'm with Youth Alliance. We are a nonprofit headquartered in San Benito County, but we also operate out of South Santa Clara County. And what we do is we provide wraparound services for youth and their families. Our programming covers case management, youth mental health counseling. We have after-school initiatives as well that we have. And I recently became involved with, actually my nonprofit became recently involved with Regions Rise Together in 2024. We're one of the last group that came in the summer that we joined the RRT program. I'm part of the Black Regional Leadership Initiative, Roundtable Initiative, and I sit on the Housing and Economic Empowerment Committee. And I recall just a couple of weeks ago, I attended the groundbreaking of the Campus Town Housing Initiative, $400 million initiative in Seaside. And from the point of conception of the idea, or when it became public, to when they actually broke ground, that was a 10-year gap. And I came to find out that MBEP was instrumental through the Regions Rise Together initiative in negotiating the affordable portion of that initiative. So that's really huge, and that's critical. Everybody who's here, or all the panelists that we're talking, had that component of housing being so critical, and to have MBEP being instrumental in advancing that cause. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Sonia?
Good afternoon. I'm Sonia Kohler, Director of Bright Beginnings Early Childhood Initiative. I'm based in Monterey County, but we partner with folks in the region. And Bright Beginnings is a collective impact initiative. We focus on the systems that surround our youngest, ages 0 to 8, and their families. And we were part of the Regions Rise Together initiative in iteration 1 and 2. And really what we bring to the table we build bridges. In order to change systems, we build bridges between community and our traditional leadership. We build bridges between also between different sectors, disciplines, etc. We always look holistically at our communities and what our children need. We also bring data, whether it's numbers or stories. We try to be as cool as your data, but not always. So we also help to forge innovative solutions to what our young people need in our community, looking at things differently, especially in a collective, collaborative way. And when I talk about the systems around young children, it's healthcare, mental health, behavioral health, dental health, all of it. We look at businesses that not only serve young children and families, but also what parents need in order to both participate in the workforce and take care of their families. We also work with our around community advocacy and governance, centering young children. And of course, a lot of you see me and go, oh yeah, it's the child care lady. I'm also the child care lady. So what I'm really proud about what we've achieved with Regions Rise Together is to really look at what our families, what our individuals need to feel that they are thriving in our economy, that we have this shared prosperity. And that can only happen if we talk to our community members. In the first iteration, we did okay, better than many. And through the first iteration, we discovered we can do a lot better. And so in 2.0, Our investors, our partners really spent the time and effort to coordinate outreach, to coordinate conversations, and to bring that back to drive the priorities within our blueprint.
Thank you. Cesar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Cesar Lara. I'm with the California Labor Federation. We represent 2.3 million union members across the state of California. But to Regions Rising Together, I was there when we first started on Valentine's Day 2020. So that was our Valentine's to the community.
That was your date.
Yeah, and he was my date. But just imagine what has happened on the Central Coast, what's happened to our country, what's happened to our world since February 2020 to today. Things have changed a lot. So it's important to understand that the first Regions Rising Together report blueprint was very focused on Salinas and slightly to Salinas Valley. The second is the Central Coast, because it's vitally important to understand that what happens in downtown Santa Cruz is going to affect downtown Salinas and everywhere in between, and understanding that working families need a voice. The Regions Rising Together report and the new report was a critical opportunity. And for Salinas, it was a great opportunity in its history. We were just coming out of Governance for Racial Equity, when it was really targeted around what are we going to do as a community when we have 5 police involved shootings. What are we going to do? Are we going to go to our camps and yell at each other? Or are we going to come and figure this out and talk about race and class? And Regions Rising Together was the great opportunity, not knowing that it was such an opportunity to continue the dialogue while the world was in chaos. And now with Regions Rising Together 2.0, it gave us an opportunity to breathe a little, analyze it, and at the end rooted in this is our economy, not their economy, and that we as a community need to come together and look at how we could be partners in this room, and we could be partners in the room that I was just at. We just marched in Salinas with 500 people, being May 1st, International Worker Day. And having this conversation today, right now, is critically important to that, because we need to come together and build bridges in the chaos that we're living in. And I know we have critical partners here around affordable housing, around, just imagine the attacks by the federal government on our food banks. For example, I see Erica Padilla Chavez right over there. We need to figure out as a community and take what we learned at Regions Rising Together to figure out to say, this is our economy.
Very good. Matt Huerta again, VP of Community Development with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. Raise your hand if you know MBEP. Yay, okay, see, I don't have to talk about that. I talk about housing, that's what I do. So our North Star is housing production. We've heard about it in so many different ways, how important it is and how far behind we are. And in terms of my role and our role in this discussion, we have a housing committee that was part of this important work of Regions Rise Together. And I think what was really important for me personally was really using this opportunity to listen. I'm somebody that's been in this space for 25 years. I feel like I have a good idea of what the solutions ought to be, and yet we're learning every day. And we have to listen to the folks closest to the harm and to the pain and work from there. And to me, that's what Regions Rise Together is coming up with an investment strategy so that we can lift all boats, right? But we have to start with the folks that are on the ground, that are working as hard as they can to thrive in our region. And housing is that piece that continues to be extraordinarily difficult, either homeownership for sure. We saw the numbers earlier, 800,000 all the way to 1.3. That's just the median home price, right? Rents are out of control. The listening that we did was super important. I want to lift that up because a lot of what the investment strategy and overall the document rolls up to about a $500 million ask. And it's a big number, but we know that the need is great. And there's a strategy behind that. And it's a 5-6 year time horizon on how we got to that piece, right? And the housing component is a little over 100 million of that, so about 20% of it. And how we got there was a series of strategies around advocacy, legal support, trusts in terms of community land trust models, the Monterey Bay Housing Trust that we've had for a while that has already invested over $30 million here in our region and created hundreds of units of housing, stabilization support. So these weren't my ideas. These came from the engagement that we did with families, with the residents in every part of our region and in many different languages. Because of one of our key partners is Centro Binacional para el Desarrollo Indígena Oaxaqueño, CDBIO, just to give a quick example, we leaned on them to make sure that we're reaching the folks in Monterey County, especially South Monterey County. There's a huge population there, and they're critical members of our community, right? That without that language bridge, we wouldn't have had them integrated into this. So I look at this plan and it's an investment strategy, but I see the real people behind it, and I see real progress that's potential for our whole region. Thank you.
Thanks. One thing you lift up, Matt, that I wanted to make sure to underscore is there were over 40 organizations in our region that engaged in the long-term planning as part of this project. It was really impressive. And Miriam, I want to start with you with what I think is perhaps the question of the moment. As Cesar pointed out, when this project started, February 2020, it was a very different time. And the theory of change of the blueprint starts with racial equity and the importance of that for our economic prosperity. And yet, as we know, equity has become a politically charged word. But the disparities are real, and we can demonstrate that with data and facts. It doesn't disappear just because it's become politically charged. So how do we continue to center that fairness and access in our work when the very language and frameworks are under attack?
Right. So there's crackdown, but not clamp down on our work. Let's remember that. The core building block of Regions Rise Together is collaborative in nature, right? Focused on racial equity. I just want to underscore a few points before I get to answer that question. Part of what I do every morning when I wake up, I go onto my computer and I look at executive orders and how they impact nonprofits in general, and my nonprofit in particular, because I have to report back to my executive team. My CEO is here. Diane, say hello. Say hello to Diane. Yes, and we discuss as a team the strategy that we need to implement to mitigate some of these, problems that would result from these executive orders. So I just wanted to remind you guys, executive orders are not the law. Congress has that responsibility to make it the law. So anyone can wake up and say, I want Department of Education dismantled. I want this not to be, I don't want you to have diversity, equity, inclusion in your language anymore, unless Congress mandates it, it's not the law. And that is why a lot of all these executive orders are currently tied up in the court system, right? You are not breaking any laws by providing mental health counseling to underserved youth in underserved communities. You are doing no wrong by doing so. You are not breaking any laws, right, by providing know your rights literature to people who need to have that piece of information regardless of their legal status. You are not breaking any laws by providing safe spaces for youth to be heard, to thrive, to lead, to grow. This is the core of your mission. And so my advice is try to make sure you reconnect with your mission, vision, and values. What are those? Remind yourself what your why is and the purpose behind your why. That's very important. Resist. Do not give up. Make those phone calls, those emails. There were 2 Republican legislators just a couple weeks ago who objected to Medicaid cuts. Kim Baladeo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. and calling their offices, reminding them that we hope you stand by what you said you were going to do, your promise, right? They listen. Attend those town halls. Remember what Mike Madrid said? That there's this disconnect. Go to the town halls and speak. Speak up. They are paying attention. You guys saw what happened with the school that was recently poked. I'm not going to name the name. That school happens to be the #1 law, or should I say, lawyer producing machine, not just in the United States, in the world. Not just any lawyer producing, constitutional law producing machine factory in the world. And they said no.
Ancient academic institution.
Ancient institutions. And when they resisted, guess what? The follow-up was, oh, by the way, we sent that letter in error. You weren't meant to get that letter, by the way. See what happens when you say, not gonna happen? Keep supporting each other. This initiative, this MBEP initiative is amazing. It's wonderful. This is what we need. I may not be able to provide all the resources that I need to get the work done, to work with the youth. Our goal, one of Diane's goals, is to dismantle this school to prison pipeline. And she's been working hard 30 years, will be 30 years this year, Youth Alliance will be 30 years this year, to ensure that that mission, that goal, she's laser focused on it, and make sure through organizing work and through youth advocacy and all of the things all the resources that we need, but we can't do it alone. We need support from, all of you all here. So that's important. Organizations should also take advantage of what I would say, walking the walk. We all say we stand for racial equity and advancement and progress and all these buzzwords, but let's make sure that we're living up to that reputation. Many of our organizations do not represent the communities that we work in, leadership, and that's very sad. We're telling them, we're only here to give you the handouts, but we don't trust you enough to lift you up to become leaders. That pipeline should be built, created, supported, sustained. That's very essential. That's all part of that equity, focusing on being laser focused on equity and keeping the language alive. Rethink how you access and spend public funds. We can't do this alone with just private funding. We still need the government. If that means we have to change the language, sometimes you may have to lose the battle to win the war. So if they don't want you to include DEI in your language, that's okay. Remember, you're laser focused on your mission. And that is that racial equity portion that you're working on, keep doing it. Maybe instead of saying you're working on, advancing Black and brown initiatives, maybe just say low income. They're not against that, but you're still serving that population you want to serve. I know I have talked a lot and the time is ticking. So all of this to say, stay focused, keep your head up. Let's get the work done.
Thank you. Sonia, this is for you. As Matt pointed out, this vision, the blueprint, lays out a series of investments that total over $500 million. And many of them are in areas that you might expect, expanding economic opportunity, housing, childcare. But the largest single category is community leadership and power building. You were on that committee. I'd love you to share a bit about, one, why that is so important, and what do you see as the most important investments within community leadership and power building?
So I had the joy of being on 2 committees, and to see that connect, the Child Care Committee as well as the Community Leadership and Power Building Committee, which are still active. and to see the bridge between what our communities need and what the systems can do to respond. We should be driving our systems, not the systems driving us. And in terms of investment, so we define leadership, anyone and everyone is a leadership, and we need to invest in our ability to engage with each other as individuals and with our systems, with our governance. How to build the power of the voices of those that are least paid attention to. From my perspective, that tends to be women and women of color. And that also means their children. And how to make sure that those voices are always at the center. And that takes time. That takes personal relationships. It takes one-on-one. It is precious, expensive labor because it's relationships. And I think that's why we have such a large investment in that aspect. It's a labor of love, similar to childcare. Relationships and community power is a labor of love. So investing in what it takes, and in my lingo, we call it the backbone, the coordinators, the folks who keep us going, who cheer for us so that we keep our heads up and when time is hard. So those systems, as well as all the information we need to make decisions. So there's training, there's relationship building, and then there's the actual going to our chambers, going to where we bring our stories and our solutions to the table. It just takes time.
Great. I think of it as you're saying, the social infrastructure is as important as our physical infrastructure of roads and broadband and electricity, et cetera. Cesar, I want to ask you about moving from planning to progress. In the work that you're doing around expanding economic opportunity, what does it take to materialize the vision that's in this blueprint to actually getting projects in the ground?
The biggest thing on that, and my colleague said it clearly, it's community needs to be at the table. We had one momentum going in the United States where President Biden signed Justice 40, that basically the historic infrastructure money coming into the country had to be, at least 40% had to be in impacted communities. So when we look at the Central Coast, childcare, any given time there's about 30,000 kids that need childcare slots, and there's only about 10,000 slots. That's a problem.
9,000 now, we've lost many.
9,000. Yeah. And also looking at the economy that we're working in, agriculture and hospitality are the first and seconds. What can we do with the economy we have now, and what can we do with the economy that we're looking forth? Where do we invest as a community to make sure that we have mortgage sustaining wages? Understanding that Monterey County and Santa Cruz County have the most expensive healthcare in the country. OCA just said 7 of the most expensive hospitals in the state need to be growing at a smaller rate. Dominican, Salinas Valley Memorial, and Chomp were 3 of the 7. And then, we look at housing. Chispa is in the room. We are at a crisis. So when we look at all that, we need to look at how and what we're going to invest as a community. And this blueprint is a starting point, but it clearly shows that we need to have community at the table. Community means employers. Community means residents. Community means the impacted communities. Understanding youth, of course, understanding that gentrification is a concern. Our neighbors to the right of us have just lived and are still living through that, where people that grew up in Silicon Valley don't and cannot afford to live there. And guess what? We're right adjacent. We're not like talking about another state or another country. We're talking about our county neighbors to the right. So when we look at what we're going to invest in, look to this blueprint as a starting point and build the table around it that includes community, looks at community benefit agreements, look at project labor agreements, look at other programs and other activities that at the root of it It's about building the leadership in the community to be ready to be at the table. Because guess what? Community is not normally invited. They're looking through the window at the table. When you're at the table, what do you do? And that's the leadership capacity that we're talking about in the blueprint. And strategically look at what we're going to do to invest in the jobs that we need for the future with labor standards, with community benefit standards, with other standards, because we can't throw away the little investment that we have because, you know, a million here, a million there, after a while, you're talking about real money. Well, we're talking about real money just here on the Central Coast.
If I can, just really quickly, Cesar, you said for our community to be ready, we also need folks like us to be ready to hear. Just making that point.
Great. And Matt, since we have very little time left, I want to give each of you one last sentence. And Matt, you can start it and we'll bring it back this way, which has to do with a year from now when we're back here at the next meeting, although it'll be a week later, so John has his data. What does success look like to you 1 year from now?
Yeah, I think that success needs to be meaningful partnerships that don't look like they do now. So we need to reach across to new partners, bringing them in, and figure out how to seed at least the initial investments in each of the priority areas, whether that's government, philanthropy, business. You know, there's going to be opportunities, and let's figure out what that partnership needs to look like.
Awesome. Cesar, one sentence.
One word, solidarity, meaning we need to be at the table as ones and let the egos on the side and look through progress.
Similar is intersectionality, the fact that labor knows statistics around childcare. We're almost there. Now we just have to to fill the gaps.
Last word, Miriam.
Transparency.
Sweet. Please join me in thanking all our panelists and their great work.